crank it up, let it roll. Stars and stripes in my soul. Steel toes on, boots in the gravel, heartland truth on every channel. Open Bible, flag on the wall. We say what we believe when we don't talk at all. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell, can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the beltway. We won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell. We back the badge, we guard the border. We love our guns and law and order. They try to shame every word we say, but we don't bow down, we just press play. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell, can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the bell. Hey, we won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell. You can cancel the show, but not the crowd. We're still here, still talking loud. Gander the free on every spell. Hit that mic, host, let the truth ring out. This is red, white, and raised hell. Cowboy hat, church bell, can't scare us into silence. We were born to rail from the back road to the beltway. We won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raised hell.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Appreciate you being with us as we get rolling on this, what would it be, a Thursday, the 16th morning. 16th morning, and where's my music? There it is. 16th morning of the 7th month in the year of our Lord 2026. And good day to you. Where's, is it Jimbo who always says, I love the smell of napalm in the morning on the chat? I'm just trying to grab it real quick. I think it's Jimbo who does that every morning. Is it Jimbo or no? It might be Charlie G. Somebody always says, I love the smell of napalm. Oh, it's Charlie. There it is. And I see it. Happy napalm in the morning all. I see you, Charlie G. I'm bringing that up because it doesn't smell like napalm out there anymore. It smells like burning plastic. First thing my wife said to me, she got a text on her phone from a coworker and said, it looks gray outside, like hazy gray. And she said, it smells like plastic. Now, I haven't been outside. I haven't been outside yet. But literally, one of the first things that I saw here is just a few minutes ago when I looked to see all of the great dancing emojis to the opening song. Somebody said, and it was CAD, I can smell it now. It smells like burning plastic. Somebody else say something else? Let's see. Yeah, apparently a bunch of people are talking about this now that I scroll back a little bit. Siri is telling me there is no chance of rain today, but it is so hazy out here. Is this from the Canadian wildfires? Does anybody know? And Jimbo said, news says hazy from the wildfires. I don't go for that contrails BS. I don't think the haze is from contrails either. I think those are very specific. If they are real at all, they're specific to times. I always ask that question. I don't know what the answer is. Let's see. Damn Canadians and their wildfires. Same reason the sunsets have a so spectacular smoke in the air from the Canadian forest fires. And then, like I said, CAD said, yeah, it smells like burning plastic. That's exactly what my is it really your birthday today, Charlie? Look at that. Charlie says, oh, it's the 16th and it must be my 70th birthday. Happy birthday to Charlie G. How about that? I didn't even expect that. I do not and did not have a happy birthday queued up anywhere, so I think the best that I can give you is
Can you dig it?
an abbreviated "Can you dig it?" Well, I got for you, Charlie. That's some applause, maybe. There you go. That's all. Let me give you the full "Can you know?"
Can you dig it?
Charlie G's birthday, 70 years young. Good on you, Charlie. And yeah, I don't know. Stay indoors if you can today. Just to, like stop breathing in the plastics. We stopped microwaving in plastic a long time ago because of the microplastics. Not intended for microwave, but microplastics getting into a lot of our food. If you cook in plastic, even though it would always say microwave safe, found out, that there are microplastics. I mean, it's too late. We've been microwaving in plastic for freaking decades. So it's too late for a lot of us, but for the younger generation, I know my wife is has taught our kids, don't microwave in anything other than glass. Don't use plastics. Microplastics are in. So the bottled water we drink, that's another thing. I don't know where she saw it or read it or whatever, but that's another one I give my wife credit for because she stopped buying plastic water bottles, because same thing. They said that the microplastics, particularly if your water bottle gets heated up, if it's left in the sun, you leave them in your car or whatever, and you're drinking out of them, that the microplastics eventually seep into the water, and now you're consuming more plastic. I don't know. That's above my pay grade. I don't really follow a lot of that. I don't dispute it at all. Like I said, she kind of looked some things up and read some things, and I trust her. So, but I don't get it. I don't know much about it, but I have to believe that if we're worried about microplastics in the water bottles, if we're worried about microplastics getting into our food by microwaving in them or cooking in them, probably not a good idea to be outdoors today breathing in plastics, unless it's just the smell. But multiple people, like I said, my wife's friend, first message she got this morning on her phone was somebody saying, why is it so hazy outside and why does it smell like burning plastic? I don't know. Sorry about that. Gotta get that plant out of here. Anyway, good morning. Thanks for being here. You saw the opening graphic, I would imagine, that would tell you who and what it is we are talking about today. And boom, come on, bring him up there. There he is. That is Dr. Everett Piper. Are church and state really separate in our Christian nation? People talk about the separation clause all the time, but are we truly a secular nation that can just welcome whatever religion in the world wants to be part of it? Well, yeah, that last part. Everybody's welcome to whatever religion they choose. If I had my druthers, I would say except for Islam, because it's not a real religion. It's a death cult. But yeah, that's kind of what it says, that the state shall not, or that Congress shall not designate a religion. We will not impose religion upon anybody, but neither will we limit the practice and exercise thereof. Okay, so that makes us kind of hey, whatever you want to believe in is fine. But it doesn't mean we weren't actually founded as a Christian religion. And Dr. Piper is quoting Vice President Vance when he talks about this. We're going to do that chat at 8 o'clock. I'm looking forward to it. JD Vance is doing a series of interviews. He spent hours on Rogan, just like he did a couple of days before the election in 2024, which is fantastic. He reaches so many people, millions of people with Rogan. And he's talking about his belief in Christianity and how it literally kind of serves as our moral compass here in the United States. Christianity. So no, we are not establishing a religion. Congress is not establishing a religion, It is not prohibiting the free exercise thereof, but he's saying Christianity is kind of what we were founded on. Dr. Piper wrote a column saying, yup, he's exactly right. And I went ahead and did a little bit of research, and I found some direct quotes from the founders supporting that very theme, not just religion, which a lot of people have done with our founding fathers and the Federalist Papers and some speeches given and so forth by those who literally built the country. Some people have said that, but I've got some very specific things about Christianity, not just religion, but Christianity. It's what we were founded upon. And considering that and the whole of the Bible, Old Testament included, that's why we call ourselves a Judeo-Christian country, rooted in the Bible and specifically founded upon Christian principles. I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation, just like Dr. Piper's column was fascinating on the issue. So very much looking forward to that. So that'll be coming up at 8 o'clock. In between now and then, we have a lot of other things that we're going to get into. I'm going to get the bad news out of the way first, just so that I can say it. And I call it bad news because most people don't want to hear it, because you can hear it on left-wing media, and you don't want to hear anybody saying anything negative about President Trump and the Iran situation, which has just become a seriously, it's a serious impediment. I'll call it that. It's a serious impediment to our agenda here, heading into the midterms. It really, really is. So I want you to just hear it from the horse's mouth, and then that being mine, the criticism, because we all heard. I even wrote about this in the Sunday briefing, the newsletter that arrived in your inbox 4 mornings ago on Sunday morning. President Trump called the Iranians last week sick people, scumbags. He said, these are people that cannot be negotiated with. We're not going to be able to negotiate with them. We're just going to have to finish the job. And that started a campaign of bombings. He was right. They can't be negotiated with. All they will do is give you lip service, tell you what you want to hear, so that you pause the bombings for a little while so they can reconstitute and regroup. You cannot trust them. So President Trump saying we're done negotiating with these people, I don't even see the point in negotiating with them anymore. That was literally just 7 days ago. And here we are. Iran draws red line after Trump threatens to expand military campaign. If the recent threats by the empty-headed U.S. president to target the infrastructure of the Islamic Republic of Iran are carried out, then everything that out of Iran's restraint has so far remained intact, namely all infrastructure in the region, will be crushed under the powerful blows of Iran's armed forces, the spokesperson, Ibrahim Zolfagari, said in a statement. Zolfagari said Iran would not allow the U.S. to intervene in the Strait of Hormuz under any circumstances, calling it Iran's invincible red line. In other words, it's hostage. I've used that language too. They hold the strait hostage so that everybody else in the world has to accede to their demands, except for the fact that they don't own the strait. It's an international waterway. But nonetheless, quote, earlier this week, President Donald Trump threatened to expand military strikes and continue hitting Iran very hard unless it returns to the negotiating table. And that's the line that I'm sorry I'm going to be critical of. I'm just so freaking tired of the yo-yo. It is just yo-yoing up and down, up and down. We're not going to negotiate. Hey, they really want a deal. They're sick people. We can't negotiate with them. Hey, we're going to bomb you until you come back to the negotiating table. I am so tired of the game. He has said that they want a deal some 40 plus times in the last 2 months. They want a deal so badly. Iran wants no freaking deal. Let's get that straight. And bombing them until they come to the negotiating table is not indication of them wanting a deal. It's you forcing them to come and talk about a deal with which they have, or in which they have no intention of keeping or honoring. Next week comes the bridges. We're going to knock out all their power plants. We're going to knock out all their bridges unless they get to the table and negotiate, the president said. Okay. Wasn't bridges and power plant day 2 months ago? it's these empty threats are getting very, very, very frustrating, in large part because I want them to be full threats. I want them to be not just threats. I want them to be promises that are kept and carried out. 40 sometimes saying they want to deal really badly. 40 sometimes saying we've defeated them. Their army, their military has no power, but yet they keep hitting strikes on the other Gulf states in the region. And they keep attacking ships in the Strait of Hormuz. I think a lot of us are getting to the point where we just want President Trump to drop the hammer down and say, that's it. Use power plant and bridge day. Quit threatening it for 2 months. Do it. Do what needs to be done to bring that outlaw regime to heel. Destroy them all, not all the Iranians, the regime, the leadership, the ones you correctly identified as scumbags and sick people and so on and so forth. Of course they are. They started an Islamic revolution in 1979 that has continued to destabilize the world, not just the Middle East, but the world, because they export their terror under the orders of that Islamic regime to all of these terror groups that go to Europe, United States, the West, everywhere, and commit horrible, horrible acts of terror, all in the name of establishing their stated goal of an Islamic caliphate. You can't negotiate with people like that. They don't want a deal. And I think most of us just want to see the president drop the freaking hammer down on these people, talking about, again, not the civilians, but the regime. And if that means critical infrastructure has to be targeted as well, like the power plants, that's going to have to be what happens. Bring them to heel so we can get on with it. The reality of it is, this is not a kitchen table issue. People are worried about things here, right now, and they're tired of playing the game. And the president said in one of his remarks yesterday, this might not, the full benefit of what he and we are doing right now might not be felt for another year and a half. Well, a year and a half from now, the Democrats will have full control of our country and we'll be on our way to losing the republic forever. It's time to just drop this hammer down on them now and get this over with. I hope that's the case. That's all I'm going to say about it this morning, because I know, like I said, it's a sore subject and we don't want to hear anybody being critical. And I don't want to be critical, because I support my president and I support my president's decision to do what he has done in Iran. It is extremely important that they not get a nuclear weapon, and I understand why. And Marco Rubio, his Secretary of State, explained it perfectly when we started this in February. I get it, and I support it. I don't support the back and forth pussyfooting around. Okay, they want a deal. You know what? They're scums. They don't want a deal. They don't want to negotiate. We're going to have to hit them. Okay, you know what? They called me and said they actually want a deal now. Okay, no, they don't really want a deal. They just hit another tanker in the strait. I'm just tired of being on the yo-yo and just riding up and down and up and down. Just end it. End it. End it. No more fake negotiations. No more memorandums of misunderstanding. Just get it done. That's all I want to see. All right, I'll leave it there, like I said, because I don't want to tick anybody off, but that is the reality of it. Yesterday, President Trump did something else that I just wanted to go up to him and high five him for. Yesterday, after it was announced on Tuesday that there was going to be, and we spent some time on this, there was going to be what did Tom Homan say? Not a shift in policy. In fact, that's what everybody else was calling it, a shift in policy, where ICE was no longer going to be conducting traffic stops, at least temporarily. Tom Homan said it's not a change in policy. He said it's just a temporary pause. Mark Wayne Mullen, Secretary of Homeland Security, said we're not going to do traffic stops as we look for the illegal aliens anymore, because until we figure out a new way to do it, because they get in their vehicles or they stop in their vehicles and then they hit the gas and they run over somebody or threaten to run over somebody and then they get shot. We've had, a couple of incidents like that. And so we're not going to be, we're going to have a temporary pause to figure out the best way forward with these people who are in vehicles that we're trying to track down. Tom Homan gave a great explanation about what they can do in lieu of traffic stops. We can get them before they get in the vehicles. We can follow them to wherever they go in those vehicles and then arrest them when they're out of them. there are things that can be done, right? President Trump, and this is when I love President Trump, and it's when he's at his best here. President Trump said, my ass. Nope, not stopping the stops, the traffic stops. Get out there and do your jobs and go get them and do it right. President Trump just overruled DHS on ICE traffic stops yesterday. And like I said, this was huge. The president described the moves as playing right into the criminals' hands. Hopefully you can see that. I can never know if you can see exactly what I'm seeing on my screen in the same way. Probably not. Yeah, here, I'll just highlight it if that helps. The president described the move as playing right into the criminals' hands and a policy, quote, the radical left Democrats would like to see. He said, we cannot give up one of ICE's most important and effective crime-fighting tools. And to that, I would say, spot on, sir. That is exactly the correct response to this. And I understand why Markwayne Mullin wanted to kind of try to let tamp down the fury of the of the left and of the media and so forth about another ICE-involved shooting. And of course, we don't want to have to put ICE agents in positions where they have to fire to save their lives. That's important too. I get that. I understand why the secretary wants that, but more than that, I understand what the president says about what kind of a signal this sends to the criminals, to the illegal aliens, to their supporters, to their traffickers, and so on and so forth. So Tom Homan, echoing President Trump in response to that.
Decision was made by the secretary along with leadership at ICE. But look, it's not a policy change. It's a temporary pause. Look, we had the last couple of shootings, ICE leadership along with DHS believes they want to look at these last couple of incidents and look, is there something that could have been done better? Is there any training that can be improved? Or it's simply ICE doing their job and bad things happen when people don't comply with law enforcement officers.
And that is exactly correct. Tom Homan is exactly correct. ICE is doing its job properly, but sometimes bad things happen when you are enforcing the law. And we see that every day, not just with federal agents, but with regular law enforcement officers, police, sheriffs, and so forth. They're trying to stop criminals, and criminals do bad things, and they end up getting shot. They don't comply. They put somebody else in harm's way. They put the officer in harm's way. They reach for something, and an officer doesn't know what it is, and he's got to save his life. He wants to go home at night. Everybody needs to know that. And sometimes criminals do things that force officers to use lethal force. And that's exactly what this is. These are federal officers, and sometimes people don't comply, and bad things happen. Let's finish what the borders are said.
I think it's going to be a short pause, and I'm confident that ICE is well trained in vehicle stops, and you're going to see us keep moving forward. But this is just a temporary pause where they look at the incidents. But let me say this too. I hear a lot of noise right now. This is going to affect ICE arrests, and it's not going to. Look, I've done this for a long time. You can when that alien leaves his home before he gets into the car, you can arrest him then. You can wait till the vehicle gets to the destination and arrest him then. Every case is different. Now, we know vehicle assaults are up over 3,400%. So if we can arrest that alien outside that vehicle and take that 2-ton weapon away from them, that's good in some instances. Other instances, we're going to still need to do vehicle stops or a significant criminal. You may want to stop him in a desolate area before he gets downtown. You certainly don't want to stop a criminal alien near a school.
So Tom Homan saying it's going to be short. This temporary pause is going to be short. Maybe he didn't know at the time he said that on Tuesday how short, because yesterday on Wednesday, President Trump said this short. It's over. Quote, I'll read his tweet here, or his Truth Social post. The men and women of ICE are doing a great job, one that has to be done. Crime is way down in America, in many cases with numbers that haven't been seen in decades. The open border policy of Sleepy Joe Biden allowed, he keeps throwing this number up louder and louder and louder, larger and larger and larger. It's not 25. Allowed 25 million people to pour into our country unchecked and unvetted. Many were criminals, and we have to get them out. In order to do this, we must be strong, tough, and smart, and we cannot give up one of ICE's most important and effective crime-fighting tools, the traffic stop. Once we do, we're playing right into the criminals' hands. He's spot on. The radical left Democrats would like to see this done, but it won't happen on my watch. ICE, be judicious, fair, and smart, and go back and do your very important job. Keep those crime stat records coming. Remember, you are loved and respected in America. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. President Trump just saying, you know what? I understand what Secretary Mullen wanted to do. Tom Homan gave the right lip service to it as well. It's a temporary pause. It's not a shift in policy, but that temporary pause is over. Get back and do your job. And if you've got an illegal alien in a vehicle, you've got to make that traffic stop. You do it. And this is even not bigger, but it's as big. Not just the illegal aliens in the vehicles. If you've got agitators in those vehicles, if you've got obstructionists, if you've got people who are interfere with the legal and the enforcement of federal law, and they're in vehicles, stop them too. We have seen that on numerous occasions. That's not just in a place like the Minneapolis situation with Renee Good, but we'll see ICE agents traveling in vehicles on highways, and they use their apps. They create these apps, these ICE blocker apps to radio, or not radio, but on their cell phones to alert one another by way of notifications where ICE agents are, and including on highways. And when they realize that they're on highways and on the move, the ICE blocker app that they use will trigger leftists to go and follow them, to tailgate them, to box them in on either side. In other words, in order to try to intimidate them in their vehicles, and to stop them from carrying out their responsibilities. That is obstruction. That is interference. That is a crime. And every one of their asses should be traffic stopped as well. And again, happy zip tie day. You're going to jail, and you're going to stay in trial, and hopefully you're going to prison. Because they think it's a game. They think it's a game, like we can just, get in the cars and ride next to them, and we're not doing anything. We're just traveling like you are, going the same speed you are and everything else. And what they're doing is they're trying to limit their movement and mobility in an effort to hamstring their efforts. That's crime. That's criminal activity. And it's dangerous, and it's leading to life and death situations. It's leading to, vehicles being run at other people, and it's leading to return, self-defensive gunfire. So go get them. Go get every single one of them. That was my rant yesterday too. I was, reminded, I think I did back-to-back road rants. I want to say maybe Tuesday and Wednesday. But talking about, and I got into the Biden thing just a little bit. President Trump included that in there when he said the Biden open border of Biden led 25 million. It's not 25. I think the highest estimate is 20. The lowest is about 10. Most people are saying between 12 and 20 million illegals. 25 is probably a stretch, but it's irrelevant to the point. What is the point is that Biden did. If you want, you being leftists, agitators, obstructionists, if you want to blame somebody for dead protesters, if you want somebody to blame for dead illegal aliens who are running their vehicles at agents and getting shot, we can provide that for you. We can provide the target for your blame, for your anger, for your hatred, for your rage. We can give you that target. But it's not the ICE agent. And it's not the orange man bad. It's Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. As I said in the road rant yesterday, if it weren't for that 12 to 20 million illegal aliens that were brought in, President Trump wouldn't have to have ordered the, quote, largest deportation in American history, which is what he promised in 2024. And if we didn't have the largest deportation in American history, going town to town, city to city, highway to highway, to get these people, then we wouldn't have you out there protesting. And if you weren't out there protesting, and if illegals weren't fleeing because here comes ICE, then none of y'all would be being shot. You have engaged in for a very long time the FA phase. You have blanked around. And when it comes to an agent or a law enforcement officer, or whether it be federal, state, or local, or what have you, it's non-negotiable. They get to go home at night. They're doing an impossible job that was required of them by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, by the forklift. Sorry, I'm always going to come back to that as the best singular visual explanation or example of the intentional surrender of American sovereignty, the intentional allowing of an invasion. That's the best example of it. Lifting that razor wire and that fencing and saying, come on, people, let's go, get in here, get in here. That's Joe Biden that did that, and Kamala Harris that did that, and Alejandro Mayorkas that did that. And because they're here, and because crime, and because high rents, and because of taking jobs, and because of taking spots in schools, and because of taking healthcare, and because of taking food stamps and Section 8 housing and so forth, because of all of the things that have been taken away by the illegal aliens and the massive millions of individuals populating this country because of Biden and Harris. Because of that, we have to go out and clean up the mess. President Trump has to go out there and clean up Biden's intentionally created mess. And when he orders that, and when Mullen orders that, and when Homan orders that, anything bad that happens is solely the responsibility of those who created it, Biden and Harris. So Renee Good is dead. Say this out loud. Renee Good is dead because of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Alex Preddy is dead because of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. The illegal who ran in Houston a week ago and, trying to, he wasn't even the target, by the way, of the investigation. They were there to get somebody else. They had a final order of removal for, but it was in the same building as another illegal alien who got in his car and tried to speed away because he didn't want to get caught up in it too. And that's another. I'm gonna really hone in on this now. That illegal alien tried to flee, and his car was running directly at an agent, so the agent shot him to protect himself. Okay, that is a Joe Biden death. That is a Kamala Harris death, because that if they hadn't let 12 to 20 million in, we wouldn't be conducting these raids right now, not on the size and the scale that they are, and then we wouldn't have these confrontations and these shootings. Understand that. Lay the blame where it belongs. Not Donald Trump, not Tom Homan, not Marquayne Mullen, not Kristi Noem before that. No one but Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And let me really drill down and hone in on that too. Not just the fact that they opened up the border. Not just the fact that they used the forklift to raise the fences and so on and so forth to allow all of these people in here, but the fact that they literally refuse to acknowledge the violent crimes being committed by some of these people. Is it all of them? No, of course not. But it's enough of them that there is a list of families whose loved ones are gone because these illegal aliens were forklift raised and allowed into this country. There are enough of them to the point where, again, let's do this mathematically, in a manner of speaking. You let 10 million, 11, 15, 20 million people into the country just in those 4 years, added to the regularly accepted number of 11 million aliens, which is what we've been saying for decades. There's about 11 million illegals in this country. Well, it's like, okay, you keep saying that, but then they just added 7 million more. And they added 2 million more last year. And, 10 to 20 million under Joe Biden in 4 years. Doesn't that make 10 plus 11 is 21? And are you sure? Why are we saying there's 11 million illegals in the country? It's probably more like 25, 35 million illegals. That's the reality of it. When you send a force, ICE, to do the job that Congress is demanding they do, again, important clarification here. Congress passes the laws. Congress passed a law that said very simply and directly that illegal immigration is indeed illegal. We have migration, legal migration here, and that's okay. Illegal border crossings are illegal. It is a crime. U.S. Code 1320, I think it's 81325. saying being in the country is illegally without permission is illegal, and you can and will be deported. That's what Congress passed a law saying. So then they send out agents to enforce said law, and now everybody's screaming bloody murder. If you allow that many people to come into this country, not only committing crimes, creating more and more victimized families, we can't wait for them to commit the crimes. This is the math I was going to do. We'll do the comparison to Islam. We talk about Islam being fundamentally incompatible with Western civilization. We talk about Islam not being compatible with the United States of America specifically. And people say, well, there's millions of Muslims. What are you saying? That they're all bad? That they're all terrorists? That they're all, violent killers? No, not at all. It only took 19 of them to change the world. 19 out of how many millions? How many millions? Maybe billions of Muslims around the world. It only took 19 of them to carry out 9/11. Right? So the point being, we don't know which 19 until they do it. And likewise, when it comes to the illegal aliens in this country, be they from Mexico or El Salvador or Guatemala or Venezuela, I don't care. Or from Saudi Arabia, from Qatar, from Iran, because they're coming from the Gulf states in the Middle East too. I don't care where they're coming from. If they're here illegally in those numbers, are they all, just like the example I just gave with the Muslims and the 19, are all of these illegal aliens going to commit violent acts against the American people? No. But we don't know which ones until they do it. Which is why it is incumbent upon us and our president and our administration and our law enforcement, federal and otherwise, to work together to get them the hell out. So we don't find out until wait to find out until they actually commit the acts. Look, the American people commit crimes too. This is something the left likes to say. What difference does it make? Americans commit, carjackings and all of the different things that we talk about illegal aliens being guilty of, raping and murdering and child trafficking and drug running and all the rest. Yeah, that's true. But to say that because we already have crime in America, it's okay to import more crime is about the dumbest ass left-wing thing I think I've ever heard. Yeah, you're right. We've got our own supply of criminals in this country. We don't need to add to it. And we don't even know who they are until they commit the crime. We have to get rid of all of them. By the way, sometimes we do know who they are before they commit the crime because they've committed crimes elsewhere. These are the people that ICE is targeting and President Trump is targeting when they say we're going to go after the worst first. People who have already been either charged or convicted of similar crimes in their home countries. They're flocking into the United States. Oh, this guy's got this guy's got that. We got to find him before he commits a crime here. And they work very, very hard to do that. Now, to the other part of this, the Houston individual who was shot and killed, almost running a police officer over, an agent over. The Houston individual, again, was not the target of the investigation, wasn't the target of the arrest. But because he was illegal and was with the target or in the same building as the target, he decided, I got a jet. I got to get out of here, which led to the vehicle almost hitting the agent and him being shot and killed. Who's to blame for that? I just told you there's blood on the hands of Biden and Harris for the presence of these people here, leading to everything that comes down after it. But let's also talk about the policies of sanctuary cities. Biden and Harris supported sanctuary cities, all of the major blue cities in America. They won't hold illegal aliens. They won't honor ICE detainers because they're sanctuary cities. If an alien on ICE's list gets arrested for speeding, for shoplifting, for whatever. And they put their name when they arrest them, put their name into the database, and they see that, oh, yeah, there's an ICE detainer on this individual. This is an illegal alien that ICE is looking to deport. Under normal law enforcement techniques and normal administrative behavior, they would say, oh, look at that. Beep, beep, boop, boop, boop. Yep, ICE, you got a detainer on a Juan Valdez. Yeah, he's been picked up. He was here in our jail. Thank you. We'll be there Thursday. We'll get a team out there Thursday to take him into custody and to begin deportation. If that happens, you know what doesn't happen? Swarming a place of business or a house or whatever other public area in which the target is identified, swarming that place and then saying, oh, well, looky here. In addition to the target, here's 6 other illegal aliens. Guess what? You're all coming now. That doesn't happen. If they honor the detainer and let ICE come and pick them up, they get arrested at the jail and there's nobody else that is harmed in any way. If they refuse to honor the detainer and they send them on their way, and then they get found in that other location, that more public location, when they get found, anybody who's with them is coming too, if they're illegal. And then that leads to the deaths of people like the one in Houston, the one in Maine, and on and on and on we go. So President Trump, ending the ridiculous well, I don't want to call it ridiculous because, like I said, I do understand to an extent what Markwayne Mullin was doing there because the optics are so bad. And a lot of people had a big problem with that. You know, we just had a shooting in Houston. We just had another one in Maine. And it looks like agents are, you know, and it doesn't help that you have lunatics like, who the hell was it? I think it was Jessica Tarloff on Fox who said, agents are now throwing their bodies in front of vehicles being driven by protesters or aliens so that they'll have justification to shoot them. They're throwing their bodies. Oh, it almost hit me, just so they can execute. They're calling the ICE agents murderers, cold-blooded murderers, saying they are literally trying to provoke the confrontation by getting in front of the vehicles so that they'll have a reason to shoot them. It's like they're serial killers looking for a reason to fire. It's, again, the most despicable type of thing that you can possibly say, that blaming the agents rather than blaming the Democrats who opened the borders for 4 years, created this situation, created the hostility, then tells everybody you have to stand up against these people. They're the Gestapo. They're Trump's secret police. Tim Walz, remember this back in February? Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, Tampon Tim, Jazz Hands Tim. Tim Walz told the people, get out there and confront these officers and take your phones with you. We need video so we can prosecute them. Turn them into the villains. Turn them into the actual criminals. So anything that happens involving ICE agent or federal law enforcement shooting of protesters or illegal aliens themselves trying to flee, anything that happens, the blood is on the hands of the left. We didn't ask for this. We didn't ask for Biden's mess, but somebody has to clean it up. And I don't think there's any other way to say it. Here's another example of it, by the way. Let me throw this one up here. This isn't an example of the, getting shot or anything, but this is what the Biden-Harris administration have brought. Another deadly illegal alien truck driver who killed people because he can't read road signs, didn't know where to drive, sentenced to less than 5 years in prison. An illegal alien from India who, while driving a semi-truck, caused a deadly crash, killed several innocent people in California, received a sentence fewer than 5 years. The New York Post referred to Jashanpreet Singh's sentence of 4 years and 8 months as a slap on the wrist, which is certainly accurate given that the crash he caused with his wildly negligent driving killed 3 people in Southern California last October. Eyewitness Jason Calamay said that Singh's semi-truck, quote, just didn't stop, didn't swerve, didn't make any kind of maneuvers. It just went straight in. Dash cam video of the crash. Do I want to show this? It's here. Let's just do it. All right, let's back it up. There's your driver. Just look at that. How many vehicles did he plow through there? An illegal alien who should not have been here. But again, like I said, they're not all coming from Latin America, Central America, Mexico. They're coming from the Middle East. They're coming from Asia, coming from all over the world, or they were till President Trump sealed the border. But that is what the result is. And there's just no getting around, who is to really to blame for it. Let me get a short time out here. If you're on Medicare and ever find yourself confused by your coverage, you're not alone. Medicare can be complicated, and the wrong information or no information at all can cost you time, money, and peace of mind. Hey, it's Bob France. For a Medicare professional I know and trust, Mark King. I've known Mark for years, and I've confidently referred Medicare recipients to him time and time again because he puts people first and explains Medicare in plain English. Mark takes the time to help you understand how Medicare works, what coverage you have, and what options might be available based on your needs. There's no pressure, no confusion, and no rushed decisions. Just honest guidance from someone who's been doing this for nearly 40 years and who knows this system inside and out. If you're unsure about your doctors, your prescriptions, or your overall coverage, Mark is the go-to guy you need. Call 440-832-8936 to get an appointment. That's 440-832-8936. And for user-friendly information, visit keepingmedicaresimple.com. I trust Mark King for answers, and you can too. All right. Mark is a great man and a great patriot. We appreciate him very much being a foundational partner of this program and of our mission here together. And by the way, that includes the Sunday morning briefing. If you are not getting the Sunday morning briefing called Strictly Speaking this week, make sure you do subscribe to it. Send me an email if you want. Just send it to bob@strictlyspeaking.org, and I will get you signed up there. Or you can do this. You can scan this code right there on your screen right now. Scan that code to get the Sunday morning briefing. Comes out every Sunday at 6 a.m. free in your inbox. And Mark King and our other foundational sponsors are responsible for that as well. So thank you very much to those individuals. All right, a couple of other quickies before we have Dr. Piper on this morning. And what I think is going to be a fascinating discussion about what religion in the United States actually means, and what the foundation of the United States actually means vis-a-vis religion. It's kind of a two-way street here. Let me share a couple of other interesting ones. We talked last week about, and this was also in the Sunday morning briefing, the police in Texas, one particular department in Fort Worth, Texas, apparently just, I don't know, either did not know or were misinformed or forgot about what laws in the United States mean and what they're based on, and they're based on the Constitution. And that means that the First Amendment always applies. Two different law enforcement officers in the Fort Worth Police Department were on video threatening to cite, meaning giving citations to, tickets to street preachers for being on the street and protesting or trying to educate or whatever people about a number of things, including and especially transing of children. They're opposed to some of the lunacy and the naked men, doing the parades with the kids during Pride Month, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So these individuals had the police called on them by the trans, child abusive freaks of the world. And the police came and told the preachers they had to stop talking or else they would be given citations because their speech offended somebody. It was very, very UK-ish because the UK has fallen so far away from free speech and civil rights. It's hard to imagine. They're literally not just giving citations to people in the UK, they're arresting them, handcuffs and all. You're in jail, you're being charged with saying things that somebody else found offensive. I mean, you talk about just a danger zone. There it is. So it was starting to look like that's what is happening here. Fortunately, enough ruckus was raised by the sharing of this stuff on social media and publishing it. I'm not saying I'm responsible, but I shared it with as many people as I can, including a few thousand who subscribe to the newsletter. to share that with the other people. Apparently, word got back to the leadership at Fort Worth Police, and they were forced to issue a massive apology and a statement that they're going to do something about it.
The biggest issue I think that I have is just the conversations and the way that we were describing what is lawful, what isn't lawful. When we're right, and when we're wrong, we're wrong. And there certainly was a better way to have that communication, and we were wrong in the manner in which we communicated that. Certainly, we're going to take accountability for it.
That is one of the lamest non-apology apologies, I think, that we could probably imagine. When we're right, we're right, and when we're wrong, we're wrong. And the way we communicated that, it wasn't the way you communicated; it was the actual belief by your officers that they could cite somebody for speech. And you have to do more than just. And here's what they say they're going to do. Let me zoom that out. Yeah, they say that they're going to have. Take accountability by giving First Amendment refresher training to officers. Quote, the way that we were describing what is lawful now, okay, we just heard that part. We're going to take accountability for it. You can't just retrain people on the First Amendment. What the hell does that even mean? First Amendment refresher training? All speech is lawful speech, okay? All speech. Threats are different. Threats to assassinate or kill public figures in particular are not okay. Speech that starts a panic, the proverbial fire in a crowded theater, or, there's an active shooter, screaming that in a mall or in a school when there isn't one. Those are things you cannot do. Beyond that, all speech is protected speech, offensive and otherwise. They don't need a First Amendment refresher. Everybody knows this. They need to be held accountable. They need to be off of the force. They need to find something else to do. That's what people are looking for. And I'm one of them. I want to see accountability happen, and I want to see accountability when you're talking about threatening our literal First Amendment rights, our Bill of Rights. There are a few things quite as egregious as that. Let's see, what else do I want to share here before we get to Dr. Piper? Maybe we did, maybe you didn't. Yesterday, there were Senate confirmation hearings for acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. So he was being questioned by a number of Democrats. He, of course, has been nominated to be the actual full-time, not just acting, but the next Attorney General. And Democrats were going after Todd Blanche pretty hard. They were going after, particularly Dick Durbin, going after him on the Epstein files and the handling of the Department of Justice on the Epstein files. It is an embarrassment that we had to listen to or watch this, but if you missed it, I think it's important just so that we can kind of we can follow along. Let me pause that there and enlarge it a little bit. I'm going to bring it up over here instead so you can see this better.
Is it not true that Congress had to pass a law requiring the Trump administration to disclose the Epstein files? The Epstein Files Transparency Act passed by bipartisan roll calls in the House and Senate to finally get the files made public?
President Trump signed that law.
Yeah,
Yes.
of course he did. After overwhelming numbers of House members and Senate members voted for it on a bipartisan basis because the administration would not voluntarily produce these documents. I've mentioned
That's not true.
Well, what part of it isn't true?
We were prohibited by law from producing those documents. This is the Judiciary Committee. There are laws that did not allow us to produce those documents, which we made plain in numerous court filings. So and President Trump had said from day one to release the files, even when he was running.
Yeah.
And so, yes, he signed it into law and we complied with it.
I remember, and everyone in the audience remembers, the links that the administration went through to delay production of these documents to the point where Congress did an extraordinary thing, discharge motion in the House to bring this matter before them and vote on a bipartisan basis to compel your administration to disclose those documents.
See, this is the kind of thing that just, it brings out to me the worst in us. Okay. And I'll firmly admit to that myself. It brings out the worst in me. It brings out hatred in me. It brings out rage in me. It brings out fury in me to sit there and listen to somebody like Dick Durbin trying to pretend that he's the morality, his party is the party of morality, that his party is the party of integrity, that his party is the party that is concerned about this. Because not once, 0 times in 4 years of Skeletor, 4 years of Joe Biden, did any of them try to compel Merrick Garland's DOJ, the Biden administration, to release a single shred of paper on the Epstein documents, the Epstein files? Not one time, 0 times. And then suddenly Donald Trump is back in office, and we want every single document solely to paint Donald Trump as being somehow as complicit in it, or he's protecting himself, or Republicans or conservatives or friends of his, or whatever. They had 0 interest in Epstein documents for 4 years. Suddenly it's, we had to use a congressional maneuver to force them to release this, that, and the other. And by the way, what Todd Blanche told him yesterday was exactly correct. They were prohibited by law from releasing numerous documents and scores of volumes by left-wing Obama and Biden appointed judges. There are judges who ruled on that and said, no, this can't be released. Secondly, and I can't remember which Republican member of the House it was yesterday who pointed out that Dick Durbin voted himself to classify certain documents that he now yesterday was sitting up there trying to demand to Todd Blanche that they should have produced. He himself, the hypocrisy. This is, like I said, this is where it brings out the anger and the hatred. And I don't want to hate anybody. I don't want to. Hate is bad for the heart. It's bad for the soul. I don't like this feeling. But I have such deep resentment and hatred for these people when they do these types of duplicitous things, these hypocritical things. It is just the worst of the worst. The projection onto the Republicans and onto Donald Trump and onto Todd Blanche, and before him to Pam Bondi. The projection that they are trying to withhold something because they have something to hide when you didn't have any interest in any of this whatsoever for 4 years of Joe Biden. And in fact, Merrick Garland did hide things. That projection is just too much. And I'm sorry. I hate having that kind of hatred in my heart, but it's the kind of thing where I'll come on this program on a regular basis and say, we're hopelessly divided. We're hopelessly divided. And what's it going to take to bring this country back together again? We talk about it. I did hours and hours and hours on this discussion, on this program, having discussions with you about it. What's it going to take to heal this divided country? We're more racially divided now than we were before, right before Barack Obama became president. More Americans, black and white, said they were fine with race relations before Obama became president. It was like 74%. People said, yeah, race relations are good. And then after Obama, it was like down to 30% because he divided the nation along racial lines. We divide the nation along so many other ideological lines, and whether it be the trans issue, which is a huge one, DEI. They've been having DEI hearings on the House committees over the last couple of days. Talking about the discriminatory nature of DEI, because it does. It discriminates against white people and Asian people. And they admitted that in the testimony. Those are the people that are least likely to be given any preferential treatment because they're already in the majority. It means they're being racially discriminated against. My point being, all of these divisive things, right? What's it going to take? We asked often. Excuse me. What's it going to take to heal that divide and come back together? And because of the hatred that I feel in my heart, I think to myself, I don't want to come back together. If your worldview is that it's okay to discriminate against people because of the light color of their skin, but it's not okay to discriminate against people because of a darker color of their skin, I don't want to live with you. If your worldview is it is okay, not only okay, but it is strongly encouraged to try to convince little kids that they should start taking puberty blockers, completely changing their body forever, giving them cross-sex hormones, preparing them for Mengele-like butchery on a surgical table. If you think that is something that is okay, I don't want to be with you. I don't want to come together with you. I don't want to be near you. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to live next to you. I don't want the divide to be healed. I don't want to bring us back together. You will have to have a complete fundamental change in your hateful, almost satanic, sadistic worldview in order for us to even want to come back together again. And I'm sorry, and I hate to be that blunt about it, but that's what these people do. They bring about a feeling that, like I said, I'm not proud of having. Before we bring our guest in here, as it is 8:06, and I apologize for the time there, let's remind everybody about our partners at AFP, Americans for Prosperity. AFP Ohio is doing extraordinary work in a number of ways, trying to make Ohio the best state in the country for economic independence, for energy independence, for government accountability. And AFP Ohio is all about policy, not politics, but about policy. And they are making and moving mountains in that regard, but they need help. They need you to volunteer. The second thing they need you to volunteer for here is, this is the political part, AFP Action. AFP Ohio is not about politics. AFP Action is. And AFP Action is about winning critical seats, including the currently Republican-held Senate seat held by John Husted. Sherrod Brown wants to get back into Congress. He is an undeclared socialist. He is not an actual member of the DSA, but he actually governs like it. We all know the reason he got fired when Bernie Moreno got him out of there a few years ago. Now he wants back in to take Husted's seat. We need volunteers. AFP Action has knocked 300,000 doors in Ohio to inform them about the importance of getting out there to vote for John Husted and others, including Vivek Ramaswamy for governor. But they have done yeoman's work, but the work is not done. There's less than 4 months to go, and we need more people blanketing areas. If you would like to be trained up on how to volunteer in your community, please go to afpaction.com, afpaction.com, and help. Become a citizen advocate to help the state of Ohio, help us win these critical races so that we can protect and preserve this republic. All right, with that, let's go into the green room now and bring to the stage our friend, Dr. Everett Piper, for his usual, almost always Thursday chat. Dr. Piper, good morning.
Good morning, Bob. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear. Loud and clear. Did you get the work done in the barn this morning?
I've been out there. I've got more to do. You're always welcome to, jump on the stagecoach, the chuck wagon, or whatever you got out there in Ohio, and get out here and help.
That's a heck of an invitation, I got to tell you. I want to get up. I want to get up at 4 a.m. with you and start milking the cows. And
no cows to milk, but horses. Yeah.
Oh, the horses. That's right. That's right. You're dealing with horses. All right. I don't want to clean out the stables either. So.
Well, as you know, I've called my horses my Democrats. They eat cash and produce boatloads of crap every day. So.
I love that. All right, Dr. Piper. What a phenomenal piece that you. What a phenomenal series of speeches and interviews that JD Vance, our vice president, has been giving in testimony to the importance that the founding fathers and that the current United States of America placed on Christianity. And your article was tremendous. I'm going to let you summarize that, and I'm going to add into it a little bit as you go with some things that I researched in response to this. But tell everybody what Vice President Vance has been saying to the New York Times, what else, USA Today, Fox News, and others. We have. Let me show you what my graphic was to promote today's show. There's you, there's me, or as much as AI says that's us. Are church and state really separate in our Christian nation? We do have the separation clause. We do say the government shall not establish a religion, but nor will it prohibit the free exercise thereof. Do we truly have freedom of religion in a nation that we are saying, and that Vice President Vance is intimating, is a Christian nation? That the two are inseparable. Go ahead.
Well, there's so much that we could do on this. This is a long conversation, but we need to. I think perhaps, and I don't cover this in my article, but let's start with Thomas Jefferson's letter to the Danbury Baptists in Connecticut. Okay. Why did Thomas Jefferson write a letter? This is not in the Constitution. It's not in the Declaration of Independence. It's not in any other document other than this letter, a personal letter from Thomas Jefferson to a group of concerned Baptists in Connecticut. Why did he write that letter? Because the Baptists were worried that the new federal government would intrude in the business of the church. And Thomas Jefferson said, don't worry about it. The federal government can't intrude into the business of the church. We've designed this new republic so that there's a wall separating the church from the state. That's what Thomas Jefferson told these Baptists, to tell them to calm down, that they were okay. The federal government can't intrude into your business because there's a wall of protection between the church and the state, and it protects the church from the state. That's what Thomas Jefferson said. That is irrefutable. That's what his letter was intended to say. That's why he wrote it to Baptists who were worried. Okay, that's the context. Context is always king, whether you're reading scripture or whether you're reading a letter or whether you're listening to your show or listening to me talk right now. Context is always king. And the context of this letter is what I just said. That's irrefutable. Left, right, center, Democrat, Republican, Independent. If you read it and you're honest, that's why he wrote it. So what's the point? The point is the wall of separation, as Thomas Jefferson describes it, is there to protect you, the Christian, the church, from the state coming into the four walls of your church, coming into the privacy of your faith and telling you what to do, what you can and you cannot do, what you can and cannot believe. That's why the wall of separation, that metaphor, that analogy that Thomas Jefferson used, exists. The wall isn't there to protect the state from the church. The wall is to protect the church from the state. And if you will, there's a door in the wall, and there always has been. Thomas Jefferson acknowledged it, George Washington acknowledged it, Benjamin Franklin acknowledged it. All of the founding fathers acknowledged, even Paine. Thomas Paine acknowledged it, arguably the most secular atheist of all of the founding fathers, acknowledged it because he references in his speeches and his writings in the founding era, he references the Old Testament, Gideon, he references Joshua, he references various different biblical heroes as exemplars of leadership. So I thought there was supposed to be a separation of church and state. Why is Paine referencing the church, religion, in his defense of a new constitutional republic? The reason he's referencing it is there was never a separation of, there was never a wall protecting political dialogue, public expression, governance from the church's influence, from the salt and light, to use biblical language, Jesus's language, that describes our Christian faith. There's a door in the wall, and the door can be opened from the inside, from the church, so that we can exit through the wall, enter into culture, do our job as salt and light for the gospel, as the good news, do our job as Christians, as we're mandated to do. And then when we're done doing our job, we can go back through the door and we can shut it and we can lock it and keep the government out of our business. That's the point of the wall of separation. Now, that's not in my article, but that is the context for everything that JD Vance said when he went on this interview tour. As you said, he hit all of them. He hit the New York Times, USA Today, and you got to give the guy credit. He's very bright. He's very articulate. He thinks very well on his feet. And he went into the lion's den. He knew that. And he went into an adversarial situation where people were going to challenge him on this, and he defended himself very well. And he said this in these interviews. He says that his Christianity influences every aspect of his life, his politics, his sense of duty, his ambition, and his moral priorities. Well, shame on him. His Christianity actually makes a difference in his life. Shame on him. Why would anybody have difficulty with that? They don't have difficulty with that when Muslims say it. They don't have difficulty with it when atheists say it. And stop telling me that atheism is not a religion. Theism is in the word. It's atheism. It is a religious view. Atheism is just as much a religion as your Christianity and mine. Okay? And in this interview, this is a direct quote from JD Vance. He said, "My Christian beliefs encourage me to concentrate on the positive." And then he went on to explain how his faith in Christ helps him resist temptations of power, his quote, and redirect his carnal impulses towards service rather than self. Okay, so essentially what JD Vance is saying is that he, and this is his quote too, that he believes he's been providentially appointed, that nothing happens outside the sovereign will of God, the providential knowledge of God, and that he's been put here to use biblical language for such a time as this, out of the book of Esther, for a brief period of time, to do the most amount of good for God and his country. Close quote, JD Vance. All right. Then he really lit the fire. He said, and I quote, "Christianity is America's creed, one that has provided the moral language for America's public and private life for the past 250 years. Christianity is America's creed." Oh, my land. The left loses their mind. Christianity is America's creed. How dare he say that? Well, George Washington said it, as I said, and I've got quotes if you want to go over that too. I didn't have time in 800 words in the Washington Times to list George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Jay, John Adams, etc. I mean, one of the seminal quotes that you've used and I've used 100 times over is John Adams, our third president. He said, "Our Constitution is made only for a moral and religious people and is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." Obviously, he believed that Christianity was our creed. He believed our constitutional republic could not succeed unless we had a public that was educated, that was trained up in morality, and that the Constitution would be wholly inadequate to govern any people that wasn't moral. And lest there be any, well, he just said religion. He didn't say Christianity. When they said religion, they were talking about Christianity.
No, but he did as well. And, that was the work that I did on this, just because I was so fascinated by what you wrote, and you quoted some extraordinary people historically, James Russell Lowell and Hilaire Belloc and so forth. And you can talk about those, but I did a search to see what some of the founders said, not necessarily, as you said, worded in the Declaration but some in the Federalist Papers and some in just personal writings. And John Adams, the general principles were the general principles of Christianity. Quote, this is from a letter to Jefferson in 1813, reflecting on the Revolution. Quote, "The general principles on which the fathers achieved independence were the only principles in which that beautiful assembly of young gentlemen could unite. And what were those general principles? I answer, the general principles of Christianity." So those are and I've got a bunch of them here where the word Christian or Christ was used by the founders and by some of the most influential, framers, in this country's history, where they speak specifically of Christianity, not just religion in general or providence or God, but the Christian God, by literally naming Christ. And John Jay is another one. The first Chief Justice, one of the strongest quotes from a founder: "Providence has given to our people the choice of their rulers, and it is the duty of our Christian nation to select and prefer Christians for their rulers." He said the words, "our Christian nation." It doesn't get much more direct than that. We were founded as a Christian nation, one that would not force Christianity upon the people, hence the freedom of religion, but one that was founded on Christian principles. And I've got Adams and Witherspoon and Rush and several others here too that I found where they use the word Christian, not just the word religion or providence or God.
Absolutely. I'm going to go, John Jay, again, president of the Continental Congress, so no slouch. Okay, they chose him to be president of the Continental Congress when we were discussing our constitutional republic and crafting it. And the result of that Congress was the society, the culture, the country that we now live in. John Jay, "No human society has ever been able to maintain both order and freedom, both cohesiveness and liberty, apart from the moral precepts of," quote, "the Christian religion. Should our republic ever forget this fundamental precept of governance, this great experiment will then surely be doomed." John Jay. And as you said, you've got James McHenry, signer of the Constitution. "The Holy Scriptures can alone secure to society order and peace, and to the courts of justice our constitutions of government, purity, and stability." The list goes on and on and on. I get so tired.
Yeah, do you know the Patrick Henry quote? Patrick Henry is another one. He said, two quotes here: "The Bible is worth all the other books which have ever been printed." And, quote, "This is all the inheritance I can give my dear family. The religion of Christ can give them one which will make them rich indeed." Not a generic religion, the religion of Christ, Christianity. So, and again, there are countless examples of this. Noah Webster, probably the strongest educational voice from the founding generation, wrote, "The moral principles and precepts contained in the scriptures ought to form the basis of all our civil constitutions and laws." Scripture should form the basis, not just religion, but scripture. in referring to the Bible, and that's both Old and New Testament. That is Christ. I mean, so, so many of these examples. The gospel of Jesus Christ prescribes the wisest rules for just conduct in every situation of life. Benjamin Rush, signer of the Declaration of Independence. You're right, Dr. Piper. I mean, there are scores of these. And the idea that people are angry at you and JD Vance for pointing out that we're indeed founded on Christian principles, these are people, I think, who are willfully ignorant.
And here's the thing. And I've got a whole list here. You've got a whole, anybody that wants to do a simple Google search can see that quote after quote from the founding fathers all the way up to Dwight Eisenhower, Ronald Reagan, Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a Democrat, obviously, saying the exact same thing as our Supreme Court Justice Brewer said, quote, that we are a Christian nation. So even the Supreme Court was ruling accordingly until we flipped. And we flipped around the 1950s. And we flipped not because of legislation, not because of the people, not because we voted to flip and become a secular nation rather than a quote unquote religious nation, a Christian nation. We flipped because of 9 people in the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court decided to try to expunge, to dissolve the glue that held our culture together by declaring that there was somehow a separation of church and state to the extent that we had freedom from religion rather than freedom of religion. And here's the thing. Christianity, by definition, does not force other people to bow the knee and to convert via the power of the state. Now, some people will say, well, what about the Crusades? And what about this? And what about that? Well, the thing that actually solved the misdeeds of some of the Crusades, and I don't think the Crusades were necessarily all bad. If it weren't for the Crusades, you and I would probably be bowing.
They were necessary. They were necessary. They weren't only all bad. They were an absolute necessity to us being here right now. I mean, in all honesty.
It was Pope Pius II, right? Pope Pius called for the first Crusades in 10 something AD to defend the Christian West, to defend Christendom from the onslaught of the Ottoman Empire. Exactly. And what did that involve? That involved enslaving people by the millions, cutting off people's heads, and forcing them to convert to Islam. Christianity does not do that. Christianity invites you to accept Christ as your Lord and Savior. Christianity says, this is the beauty of our Christian faith. Let's talk about it. And if you want to become a follower of Christ, let me show you how. Okay? That's not forced religion. The Christian religion actually gives us the freedoms that we enjoy in the United States to say no to Christianity. That's the very nature of Christianity, is you can say yes, you can say no. It's your decision. God invites you. He offers you this gift of salvation. You can accept the gift if you will, but it's Christmas morning, and if you want to walk away from the gift and not open it and say stuff rude about the gift giver rather than stuff that's gracious and thankful, that's your business. You can do that. You can be a jerk on Christmas morning if you want. You have the freedom to do so within the Christian faith. In Islam, you don't have that freedom. So the freedoms that we enjoy exist within the fences of the Judeo-Christian biblical worldview. Without those fences, you wouldn't have that freedom. That's the paradox of liberty and law that G.K. Chesterton and others talk about here in the United States of America. Well, when you tear down the fences, which the Supreme Court did back in the 50s, you don't get more liberty, you get lots of little laws. Again, G.K. Chesterton, and that's what we're seeing in our culture. Anyway, back to J.D. Vance. He is in very good company, in addition to all these founding fathers quotes, from the Supreme Court justices to the patriarchs of our faith. Yes. and our country. There are 2 quotes that I think are incredibly prescient here, and they dovetail with 2 people I didn't mention in my article because of time, and that would be Abraham Kuyper, former Prime Minister of the Netherlands, and William Wilberforce of Great Britain. And I'll circle back to those at the end of this.
Okay.
Here's one quote where it supports exactly what J.D. Vance and you and I are saying right now. It's from James Russell Lowell. Well, who's he? He's a 19th century abolitionist. He was a Harvard professor, and he was the first editor of the Atlantic Monthly. Okay? A guy of influence, cultural influence. This is what he said. The worst kind of religion is no religion at all. And these men living in ease and luxury, indulging themselves in the amusement of going on without religion, may be thankful that they live in a land where the gospel they neglect is tamed and has tamed the beastliness and ferocity of the men who, but for Christianity, might long ago have been eaten by the South Sea Islanders or had their heads cut off and tanned and their hides tanned like the monsters of the French Revolution. So essentially, I love the way he puts this. It's the Christianity that you bemoan that has stopped our culture from doing what other cultures have done, like South Sea Islanders. He references these because many of them, or some of them, were cannibals. So you could have been eaten by cannibals if it weren't for Christianity taming the beastliness of our nature, the ferocity of men, or you could have been hanged or beheaded and had your hide tanned like the folks that suffered the guillotine in the French Revolution, which is true. Why is the American Revolution different than the French Revolution? Why do we enjoy freedoms, and why didn't we suffer the fate of the guillotine in America like the French did as the result of their revolution? Well, it was because we honored the Christian principles. We honored these words of our founding fathers. And James Russell Lowell is citing this. And then we have this famous quote by Hilaire Belloc. Let me find it. He's an early, if people don't know who he is, he's an early 20th century essayist and poet, Catholic polemicist and historian, famous writer, great writer. He says essentially the same thing that Mr. Lowell said. He says this: the modern world imagines that it has outgrown religion. It has done nothing of the kind. It has merely forgotten it, and because it has forgotten it, it no longer understands itself. Men do not realize that the whole framework of their moral judgments, their political habits, and even their intellectual methods were formed within a Christian society and cannot exist long outside it. When that framework breaks, they will not find themselves enlightened but bewildered, not free but enslaved, not rational but confused. That is a take-home quote. So what Belloc and Lowell and the founding fathers, Supreme Court justices thereafter, all the way up to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Dwight D. Eisenhower, Ronald Reagan, what they've all said is the same thing, that our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people and is wholly inadequate for the government of any other. They're echoing the words of John Adams. And what they're doing, let me get back to Wilberforce and Kuyper. A lot of people have forgotten both of these people. Abraham Kuyper, former Prime Minister of the Netherlands, is the man famous for coining the phrase, "There is not one square inch of all of creation over which Christ does not scream mine." Now, it's been paraphrased to reclaim every inch of creation for Christ and his kingdom. When you hear that phrase, that's a paraphrase of Kuyper. I'm going to say it again. There's not one square inch in all of creation over which Christ does not cry mine. It's that Kuyperian model of thought that everything, whether it be art, whether it be government, whether it be agriculture, whether it be debate, whether it be education, whether it be business, everything is under the authority of Christ if you're a Christian. There's not one square inch of creation over which Christ does not call you to enter into the public square as the body of Christ, as his hands and his feet, as his mouth, as his voice, and say, art can be better because of Christianity and Christ. Government can be better because of Christianity and Christ. Business can be better because of Christianity and Christ. In fact, without Christ, all of these aspects of culture will unravel. The glue will dissolve, and we will enter into chaos without Christ and his kingdom. That's what Kuyper was saying. And he was saying it within the context of the government of the Netherlands, over which he was the prime minister. So this just isn't an American discussion, it's a worldwide discussion. And then we have Wilberforce, Great Britain, not America. And people should understand that without Wilberforce, the British government would not have outlawed the slave trade. He fought for over 25 years on the floor of the British Parliament to abolish the British slave trade. He failed time and time again. But he kept going back because Wilberforce had made a decision because of the influence of John Newton, the author of Amazing Grace, How Sweet the Sound That Saved a Wretch Like Me. John Newton told Wilberforce, after Wilberforce converted to Christ and became a biblical Christian, Newton said, don't leave government because government needs the salt and light of your Christian faith. Don't leave government and become a preacher like me. Stay in government because that's your calling, and do the work of Christ in government. Get rid of the slave trade. Why did Newton care about the slave trade? Because he was a former slave ship captain, and he recognized the evil of the very business that he used to be captain over, literally. And he told Wilberforce, get engaged in government, breach the wall, go through the door, enter into society, be the salt and light, stop this evil for the sake of Christ and his kingdom. And then you can go back through the wall that protects you from the king and shut the door and you'll be okay. That's why we abolished the slave trade. Without Wilberforce, we wouldn't be talking about the very things we're talking about today. Wilberforce lit the match for abolition here in the United States. And Kuyper set the context for us to be talking about truth and beauty and wisdom within education, freedom within the fences of constitutional liberty. This is all a biblical worldview. It's all the result of JD Vance doing exactly what he says he's doing. He's absolutely right. People just need to calm down. He's not calling for forced conversion. He's calling for a discussion of what's good and beautiful and true. And you have to have a measuring rod outside of those things being measured, or you don't know what's good and true and beautiful. You're going to digress to nothing but power and politics. And without Christianity in the public realm, our country, every country, whether it be the Netherlands, whether it be Great Britain, whether it be the United States, will inevitably become a living hell on earth. It won't become the utopia that these critical theorists, these neo-Marxists, are arguing for. When you get rid of God, you don't get good government. You get godless people that exercise their power over you, and you have zero freedom as the result.
That's a fantastic summary, and some of the quotes that you provide are phenomenal. And there's one from Everett Piper that I should add here. We should all be thankful that our current vice president is willing to suffer ridicule and mockery from our culture's political intelligentsia and educated elites by reminding us of the obvious: religion should never be a private matter. And that's, of course, how you closed your article, in which you wrote about what the vice president said and quoted some of these individuals. And obviously in 800 words, you couldn't get all of that in there. But what you said is so true and so important. He's willing to suffer ridicule and mockery. Why do you think it is that we are kind of the only ones that are subjected to such? Of all the world religions, and there seems to be, it may be just simply because of majority status. I don't know. It's kind of like it's okay to discriminate against and mock white people because there are more white people. So therefore, it's okay to do that, I suppose, because of the majority status. Same thing with the, I don't want to say the male patriarchy, but if you're in the majority, or if you are in quote unquote power in some way, shape, or form, apparently it's open seasons, because nobody, if you insult other faiths, and I won't include Islam. You brought up Islam and you talked about why the Crusades were necessary. And we talk about, what Islam is built upon and so forth. But the other peaceful world religions, that's why Islam doesn't apply. No religion is subjected to the type of mockery that Christianity is. And I don't know why that is.
Bob, some people, even some Christians get uncomfortable when we go here, but I'm going to, because I'm going to answer your question. I think it's spiritual. I think it's spiritual warfare. I think it's satanic. I believe Satan is real. I believe God is God, and I believe Satan is Satan. I believe the biblical narrative that there's good and evil, and I think evil is driven by a satanic worldview. Marxism is a satanic worldview by definition because it fights against God. It declares God does not exist. What more would Satan want to do in the lives of any individual, any country, any culture than to get us to commit the ultimate blasphemy and shake our hands in the face of God and say, you do not exist. There is no such thing as you, God, my creator. Why do Christians and Jews, let's put Jews in the mix, why are Jews suffering this illogical, this irrational diatribe worldwide right now? It makes no sense. If you would have written a novel or tried to produce a movie that said, well, the Jews are going to get attacked in mass on October 7th, these radical terrorists are going to parachute across the border of Israel, enter into an Israeli village, and massacre over 1,200 Jews, babies, women, butcher their bodies, drag them behind their trucks, celebrate it, post it on the internet, call home and tell mom and dad, I just killed another Jew, and have everybody saying, praise Allah, good for you. If you would have written a script suggesting that the people would buy that and believe that any such thing could happen, not that that would happen, but that the consequence of that people would be hating the Jews within hours, protesting the Jews for this massacre rather than sympathizing with them and defending them and saying, I'm not a Jew. I don't agree with their Jewish faith. And yeah, the government may not be right all the time, but my land, nobody has the right to breach a country's border and butcher citizens by the thousands and then claim that somehow they're the victims. I mean, Bob, I'm going down a rabbit trail, but I'm really not. How in the world could we buy that lie? How could Candace Owens buy that lie? How could Tucker Carlson buy that lie? How in the world could anyone believe that the Jews are the bad guys in this story and that Hamas is the victim? The same goes for Christianity. How could anybody believe that Christians are the bad guys in American culture and that somehow everybody else is the victim of our bigotry and our hatred and our privilege and our oppression? How could anybody believe that? And
it sounds more and more like what I was saying, just about about white people. You acknowledge your privilege. You are privileged, and you have power that other people don't have because of your race. Well, I think they think the same way of Christians, because again, our status in the United States, in particular in the West, we're not the biggest people in the world in terms of population of Christians. I mean, how many Muslims in the world? How many Hindus in the world? I don't even know what the numbers are, but I just feel like that we are indeed singled out for persecution and for mockery and the things that you talk about because of our overwhelming status, particularly here in the West.
We are. There's no question we are. I don't know how anybody could dispute that the United States isn't subject to some sort of criticism that seems to be unusual and above other countries and other cultures. So the question is why? When the United States has done all this good in our world, I mean, if it weren't for the United States, how would World War I and World War II have ended? If it weren't for the United States, we all might be speaking German right now. If it weren't for the United States, we wouldn't have the international aid by the billions and billions of dollars that is flooded across the world every time there's a crisis, whether it be a tsunami, an earthquake, or whatever. A famine, the United States comes in and does good work. Now, are we perfect? Absolutely not. Have we done some stupid things? Sure. But so has other countries, so have other cultures. But why do we suffer all the ridicule and abuse? I really think it's spiritual, because it doesn't make any logical sense. There's no logic here. And therefore, I have to conclude that what the Bible says about Satan trolling the earth as a roaring lion, devouring who? Christians. Devouring those who believe in the kingdom of God, in the gospel of Christ. And therefore, we suffer illogically, irrationally so as the result of this spiritual warfare that takes place. Now, some people may say, well, Piper sounds like he thinks there's a demon behind every bush. When he stubs his toe, it has to be the devil's fault. I'm not saying that, people. What I am saying is I believe the Bible. And when the Bible says that Satan is real, I take it to the bank. I believe it. When the Bible says that the evil we experience in our lives, in our culture, in our country, in our existence, exists at least part, if not greatly, because of Satan's influence in our world, then I believe it. And when I see irrational, illogical things taking place that expose Christianity to unusual persecution and ridicule, the only thing I can conclude is you people have lost your minds. And the reasons you've lost your minds is because of what St. Paul says in his epistle to the Romans. You've been given over to a reprobate mind. You can't think your way out of a paper bag any longer because why? You've worshiped the created rather than the creator. You're worshiping yourselves, which is exactly what Satan wants you to do, rather than God. I believe it's satanic, Bob. I really do.
I think that's as good of an argument as I can think of as an explanation, rather. Have you ever heard of Christophobia?
Yes.
Okay. I kind of haven't. I kind of thought I was making a word up there because I'm wondering why Islamophobia exists. If we condemn and criticize Islam for all of the reasons we should condemn and criticize Islam, because it is, in my opinion, not a faith. It is not a religion. It is a political power structure. It is an organization attempting to gain all power in the world. It is not about faith. And I've gone through this probably with you, and I apologize if I have, but so many elements of it just simply do not match up. If you don't worship our God, we will kill you in his name. That's not something that a religion typically would embrace. But if we point these things out, we're called Islamophobes. We can't criticize Islam. We're bigoted. We're targeting people for their faith and so forth. And I was talking about this before you came on in the first hour about how does this mean that every practitioner of Islam is evil? No, of course not. But it doesn't take many. It took 19 of them to do 9/11. The problem is we don't know which is which. We don't know which of them are going to be Islamic terrorists. I don't know about Christo terrorists. Are there people committing terror acts in the name of Christianity? I don't think so. I know that some Christians have done terrible things, but not in the name of God. I'm doing this because God commands me to. In Islam, their belief is that Allah commands them to kill or convert, that Muhammad tells them, if you draw an image of me, you shall be struck dead. I mean, they're big on death. They're big on killing people for not being proper servants to Allah. I don't see the same thing happening in Christianity. I mean, I think Timothy McVeigh may have been a Christian, but he didn't blow up Oklahoma City because of his Christianity. He blew up Oklahoma City because of his fury with government. So you understand my point? They commit terrible crimes in the name of their faith. And if we point it out, we're Islamophobes. I don't see equal things happening here for anybody to be just in being Christophobic, if that's a thing.
Well, I have talked about Christophobia myself. I've written about it, and it's a bit of a sleight of hand, a mockery of the use of the word phobic or phobia.
That's what I was trying to do. That's exactly why I said it. I mean, because nobody calls people who mock Christians Christophobes, but they call us Islamophobes.
Well,
so apparently they do.
It's a misuse of language, and we've talked about this before. Words matter. Words mean something, and the fact of the matter is, disagreement and fear are not synonymous. Just because I disagree with a Muslim doesn't mean I'm afraid of the Muslim. Just because I disagree with a lesbian or any advocate or anybody waving the rainbow banner of LGBTQIA, if I disagree with homosexuality, the practice of it, doesn't mean I'm afraid of somebody who argues differently. Disagreement, I'm going to say it again. I want everybody to hear me. Disagreement is not synonymous with fear. What does phobic mean? What does phobia mean? It means fear. You have an irrational fear of something. If you're agoraphobic, you're afraid of heights, okay? If you're claustrophobic, you're afraid of spaces, confined spaces. It's an irrational fear. So when you say I'm homophobic, you're saying I'm irrationally afraid of those who practice homosexuality. I am not afraid of you. I am not afraid of you. I disagree with you, and the words are not synonymous. When we gave up our language, he who controls the language is going to win the debate. When we gave up our language and we started buying into this, I think it started with homophobia. I don't remember people coining these words phobia tying them into political issues until the debate over homosexuality.
I think
And
you're
I
right. That
still,
was probably the original, in this context, the original phobia probably was.
I
Yeah.
think so. And they started misusing the application of phobia with regard to a disagreement over sexual morality. And I said 1,000 times over, I'm not afraid of you. You need to get your language right. Fear and disagreement are not synonymous. That's point number one on this issue of phobia. So, do people have an irrational fear of Christianity? Yeah, they do, because we're being criticized irrationally every time we open our mouth as wanting to do things in our culture that we don't want to do. And in fact, our faith would prohibit us from doing, forcing people to convert, telling people they don't have the freedom to live their lives within the constitutional laws that we have as they see fit. As Thomas Jefferson said, if it doesn't break my leg or pick my pocket, I don't care. Now, I may disagree with you. I may call it immoral. I may call it wrong. I may call it unhealthy, but that doesn't mean I'm trying to legislate you legislate your behavior in such a way that you can't do it. Okay, that's a difference too. So we need to make sure we know what we're talking about when we talk about these words phobic. But I think of Bill Maher, I can't quote him exactly, but a few years ago, and again, I disagree with a lot of Bill Maher's vulgarity. I disagree with a lot of his libertarian leanings with regard to morality, but the guy still does not have a darkened heart to the extent that he can't recognize that Christians are different than Muslims, because he said on his show, wait a second, somebody was trying to equate Christianity with Islam and Christian fundamentalists with Muslim fundamentalists, and they both behave the same way. And Bill Maher stopped him and said, that's crazy, that's nuts. I'm cleaning up the language a little bit right now. He said, that's nuts. He said, I don't know any Christians that are trying to blow up buildings or chop people's heads off. I would much rather live next to, I would much rather have my next door neighbor be a fundamentalist Christian than a fundamentalist Muslim, for obvious reasons. They behave differently. I'm not afraid of the Christian. I rightfully am afraid of what the Muslim might do. Bill Maher said that, and he's absolutely right.
I agree, and he's a great person to quote. I quote him a lot too, just because he is an atheist, obviously. He is a Democrat, and he is an old school liberal, not like a new school, Marxist. And he has come around so much more so to me, even in things like Christianity. Despite being, he had one of the last full length sit downs with Charlie Kirk before Charlie Kirk was murdered. And it was an interesting debate. I watched it all, and very respectful of everything that Charlie had to say and believes. He just believes differently, but he is willing to listen to the conservative side, the religious right, the Christian right, and so on and so forth. He'll debate and he'll discuss, but he is tolerant of it. There's that word we talk about all the time. The left is all about, I will not tolerate your intolerance. But Bill Maher tolerates it and respects it enough to have the conversations and won't mock it, and absolutely does see the difference between religion from a Christian worldview and that of an Islamic worldview. Which brings me to the question. I saw somebody, and I don't know if it was an actual legislator or somebody who was running for office, who made a pretty, I guess it would be considered, radical proposal that said Muslims should not be allowed to run for public office. Now, it's not going to happen because of the freedom of religion and Islam's status as a religion, which again, I do not agree with. But somebody said that somebody that is representing a faith that does say cut your head off, that does say kill or convert infidels, that does say, if you die in service to Allah, you will get 72 virgins to have your way with in heaven. How on earth is that in any way, shape, or form religious? It's grotesque is what it is. But the radical proposal was these people should not be in government representing the West, representing the people of the United States of America. Any thoughts?
I think we need to be careful here. Because it can be spun back on us. Be careful what you wish for. I would rather beat the Islamic worldview in the public square, in the market square of ideas. I would rather beat them at the ballot box than try to legislate them out of existence. Because if we pass laws that make, and I understand what you're going at in terms of trying to redefine Islam as if it's not a religion, but you're not going to win that one, Bob. It has been since the 600s, and it's going to continue to be quantified as a religion. We can debate that. We don't have time on this show. But
We don't have time to debate that, but define that then. What is a religion?
They have a view of God. They believe in God. Okay, that's irrefutable. Whether you agree with it or not, that's not my point right now. They believe in God. They define who God is. They have scriptures that they follow as exemplar of that definition of who God is and what God requires of them in their daily lives. They have a view of how they're supposed to behave here in the temporal world, and they have a view of eternity. Now, that sounds like a religion. Now, does the religion, as it has evolved, require evil things of them? Absolutely. And we should point out those evil things. But if we disqualify...
I guess you just hit it, Dr. Piper. If your religion requires the performance of evil, can you really say that it's a religion? And maybe what we have to accept here, maybe we just have to accept that not all religion is founded in goodness, in morality, in piety. I mean, I don't know how to describe it, but because it's a religion that essentially calls for evil things to be done in the name of this quote unquote God and this vision of eternity filled with virgins that apparently, I don't know, I've joked about this in the past. If the heaven for a terrorist who loses their life in service to Allah, if the heaven is you get 72 virgins, then I guess that's the hell for the virgins, because they get to be sentenced to eternity being ravaged by these animals that that died killing people, for crying out loud. So anyway, you add all of those things together, and I just don't see what we, I guess, conventionally believe is quote unquote religious.
Well, that's because you're a Christian, and you're seeing that these claims of religious fidelity are absurd in your mind. In your soul, you recoil against this because your soul leans into a biblical definition of who God is and how you're supposed to respond to God through Jesus Christ as God. Okay, this is a different discussion than what Islam has. But there have been evil religions since the dawn of man. The Hittites worshipped Moloch, and they sacrificed their babies in burning furnaces to Moloch. Now, was this a religion? I would argue it was a religion, a very
not as we define religion.
Well, depends on. It wasn't Christianity. No, was it the right?
But Hinduism isn't Christianity either. But I don't have a problem with calling it a religion
too.
And Buddhism is not, it's not Christianity, but I don't have it's a religion with which I do not agree, but I don't have a problem with it as a religion, whereas Islam just doesn't seem to fit that definition for me. And
well,
I know I'm being
in terms of discussion of world religions, I think you're giving Buddhism and Hinduism a little bit of an easy critique here. I mean, we've got Buddhists in World War II Japan that were butchering people by the millions. They were impaling babies in China. When Japan invaded China, they impaled babies on their swords and their spears. So Buddhism isn't
in the name of Buddhism, or were they Buddhists who were practicing this for a different reason? And the only reason I say that is because when I think about Islam, again, we talk about it's what they are commanded to do by their holy book, by the Quran, and by the Islamic verses. They are commanded to do these things. They are commanded to kill or convert all infidels and so forth. I don't know enough about Buddhism to know were they acting on orders of their faith when they were doing those horrific things?
In fairness, I'm going to say I don't know.
Okay, I don't either.
I don't know in terms of what those individual Buddhists did, but I can say that their Buddhist faith did not preclude them or stop them from doing it. And I would say the Hindu faith, back when I was a student in Chuck Colson's Centurion's Fellow program back in 2007, we had a man by the name of Michel Maglavati, who I believe is still alive, and he's an expert on Eastern religions. He was the guy that Chuck Colson brought in to teach us about Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and the various different Eastern religions. And Michelle Maglavati would point out that they're not lily white in terms of their advocacy of violence, because within the Hindu faith in particular, and I forget what it's called, there's this exercise of if a husband dies, the wife can be executed along with the husband so that they're buried together. Their bodies are both burned on the same funeral pyre. Do they still practice that in modern culture? I don't know. Some probably do in the remote villages of Hindu countries. Michelle Maglavati would argue that indeed that takes place. So I don't know that I would exonerate Buddhism and Hinduism as being lily white. I wouldn't do that. And frankly, some people, if they lean agnostic or atheist and they're listening to us right now, Bill Maher would say, well, hey, you Christians did some pretty ugly things too. And my response would be the same response I gave when I was invited to Hollywood several years ago for the screening of a new movie that had just been released. Dan Merchant was the producer. He supposedly was a Christian. He was a left-leaning Christian who had produced a movie called Lord Save Us from Your Followers. And all this movie was an extended man-on-the-street interview of people interviewing Christians about their views of non-Christians and non-Christian behavior, primarily LGBTQIA. So Dan Merchant went across the world, literally, not just the United States, but he went to Western Europe and he went all across the world, interviewed Christians about their thoughts on LGBTQIA, and then he interviewed non-Christians as to how they felt about what Christians were saying. And it embarrassed the Christian community, because Merchant, by virtue of the way he produced and edited the movie, had a lot of people that I would put in the redneck, not necessarily good representatives of my Christian faith and how I would
we see that a lot.
myself. Okay. So I sat in a theater in Hollywood, and afterwards there was a panel that was called to discuss the movie. That's why I was there. There was a guy that was the current editor of religion for the LA Times, an atheist, interestingly enough. There was a publicist who was a secular Jew, and there was Dan Merchant, and there was me. I was the token Bible-believing evangelical that they flew in from Oklahoma because I guess they couldn't find one anywhere closer to LA to bring in. Okay? I was the first one out of the box that was asked a question. So we just watched this movie, which made Christians look pretty dumb, pretty judgmental, pretty thoughtless, somewhat uncaring, and certainly not intellectual in the way they were responding. I was the first one out of the box. And the question was, Dr. Piper, what do you think of this movie? And I said, well, I think it had a good point. And you could hear a pin drop in the theater. And the rest of the panelists were stunned. And after there was a little bit of a silence, I said, here's why I think it had a good point. Because the obvious is that the only solution, the only cure, the only soap that solves this problem that you've pointed out is Christianity itself. You couldn't critique Christianity as being a joke, being wrong, being thoughtless, being uncaring, unless you believed in the Christian virtues of care and compassion and love. Without Christian charity, you can't critique other people as being uncharitable. You can't even produce this movie unless you assume the Christian worldview as a basis for criticizing the people that you've featured. Okay, there was quiet. And then the moderator turned to the LA Times religion editor, who was an atheist, and said, well, what do you think of that? And I kid you not, Bob, all he said was, I disagree. And then he moved on and changed the subject. Okay. Tell me how you can critique people. He had nothing. Tell me how you can critique people for being unloving unless you assume Christian charity, the definition, the biblical definition of love, as the basis for that critique. Tell me how you can critique one religion as being evil and another not, unless you have a Christian biblical foundation definition of evil in the first place. All of the criticism that we see of Christianity, of Christophobia, that we see in our culture assumes the virtues of Christ, upon which they then start condemning those of us who follow Christ. I hope I'm making sense.
It does. It makes perfect sense.
Without the assumptions of Christianity, our critics have no basis upon which to point a finger at us and say, well, you're wrong. Well, if there is no right, if there is no wrong, if it doesn't matter what you believe, as long as it works for you, if one religion is the same as another religion, which is what your secular worldview presumes as a fact, then on what basis do you tell me that you don't like what I believe? You can't do so unless you admit that my Christianity is the measuring rod that you're using to measure me and say I'm not Christian enough.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to respond to that. I don't want to see that movie. I don't want to see it. I'm glad to know about it, and that's an interesting story you've told. I don't think you've ever told that one before, but I don't want to see that movie because it would irritate me, because I understand exactly the type of intent that they made that with in order to make us all look, and it's kind of infuriating. Dr. Piper, great stuff. That's two weeks in a row. Yeah, last week talking about the importance of Judeo-Christian the Jewish impact on America and the American impact on Judaism and so forth. And today, another great conversation on the importance of Christianity in this country. Always appreciate you very much, Dr. Piper. Thank you for the time. When's the next Rebellion coming out? I think you're muted. I think you muted yourself, Dr. Piper.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. Go ahead.
I hope you could hear me in that last riff that I had. Okay.
I did not.
You couldn't?
No. I heard the big long thing that I responded to, but just I stopped hearing you. I stopped hearing you when I said, "When is the next Rebellion coming out?"
I was going to say, have I been talking in a vacuum for 30
No.
minutes?
Believe me, I would have told you. I would have been doing this, saying, "We can't hear you."
The Rebellion. I have one out every weekend, so another one's coming out soon. Okay.
That's all I wanted to find out. People need to make sure to watch your podcast called The Rebellion. Dr. Piper, thank you very much. We appreciate you.
All right. Blessings. Bye-bye.
There you go. That is going to do it today. Thank you, everybody, for I hope you. I don't want to overdo it on matters of faith. I put obviously a lot of time in this show to pop culture, our societal culture, obviously our politics. It's the basis of the show. I don't want to overdo it on matters of faith. I don't want to turn it into the 700 Club. Not that I could, but I really find value in these conversations with Dr. Piper about religious context in the United States. I do, whether it's Judaism or Christianity or Islam or whatever. I find these things valuable. I hope you do too. I really do, but I have no idea. Give me feedback. Use the comment section. Tell me enough of the Bible thumping if you want. Okay. Hit the comment section if you're watching on replay. I would love to hear that. In the chat, obviously, I can't watch the whole chat while I'm talking, but I would like to look back at some of those as well. I can save the chat and see some of those. So let me know if you if you had enough of the preaching and teaching as opposed to the conversation about the rest of the actual political world. All right, that's it. Thanks, everybody. Don't forget, hit the thumbs up. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Please don't forget to share the show and share the channel with everybody in your conservative world, okay? That's the only way we're going to grow and have a bigger impact than we're trying to have right now. Thank you. Be well, be safe, stay free. Bye-bye.